Hi, it's Jean at Kept in Stitches. Welcome to my stitching cottage. It's Tuesday, so it's time for Tip Demo Tuesday. And as promised, previously that I have told a few of you, and also because some people have asked for me to show how I fold my fabric in the way that I store it on all these shelves behind me. So today I'm going to share with you how I fold, organize, and store my fabrics. For the most part, there are some parts that won't be included in this with, some of the small things that may come up in a later video. But today I'm mainly focusing on how I fold, organize, and store my larger quantities of fabrics, the larger cuts, that type of thing, and down to, like a fat quarter and some of the leftover pieces I will share with you. So first of all, of course, I'm at my cutting table because that is where I have the room to show you how I do this and where I do most of my folding of my fabric. I do want to let you know, first of all, that I do not pre-wash my fabrics. I've never had a problem. If I'm doing a quilt that has high contrast fabric in it, like a red and a white or something like that, or a deep, purple and white, something like that, I may test it, or I may go ahead and pre-wash that just to be on the safe side. But as a rule, I do not pre-wash my fabric. Before I fold it and put it on my shelves, or however I store it though, I do press it. I do starch my fabric. I do not saturate my fabric. I just lightly starch. But what I have found and like to use, this is just my preference. No, there are many methods out there, many different kinds of starch and everything, but what I have found that I like, and because it goes a long way and is very easy to use, is I buy the Terrio Magic, and you can find that on Amazon. I buy it in the 32 fluid ounce, and then I have one of these spray misting bottles. And what I do is I mix about 1 part Terrio Magic to 3 parts water. That's my normal mix. If I want a little heavier starch, I can mix 1 to 2 parts. You can mix it whatever strength that you like to use, but I find about 1 part to 3 parts water is what works great for me. So I will pour in my little bit of Terrio Magic first in here, then I will fill it with the water and shake it up really good. And then I just lightly mist my fabric as I'm pressing it, and I do use steam. That's my preference. So that is how I first prep my fabric. And while I am doing that, your fabric does not come off the bolt straight. So if you've ever been cutting strips and you know where the fold is on your fabric, the little fold down here, which you will be cutting a strip and you open it up and it goes straight and it's got that little kink in it where the fold is, that's because it hasn't been squared up and straightened before you cut it. So as I am preparing all my fabrics, I always make sure that I hold them up, square it so it's laying flat and everything by the selvages, kind of hold it up, move them so that you don't have a wave in it or anything, that it's laying straight before I press it. And then you won't have that little odd angle once in a while when you're cutting your fabrics. So the first thing that I do, of course, after I have pressed my fabric, is if there is a selvage that I can read that still has the part on it, I always want that. So when I fold it, it's up so I can see that if I like to see that information. And of course you want to measure. So I always write what the yardage is when I put it down. So as I pull out for a project, I know right away whether there's enough fabric in that folded fabric for the project that I'm looking for before taking it out, unrolling everything and finding out, no, there's not enough fabric in there. I can just look at the little label that I put on there and know how much fabric is there. So this is a yard cut. And what I do, the next thing that you are going to need, and this is whichever is your ruler that is the longest. This is a 24-inch by an 8.5-inch wide. You can use a 6-inch by 24-inch if that's what you have, but for my method, the 24-inch in whatever width that you have is what you want to use. Because what I'm going to do is I have this fabric laid out here now, and I'm going to pull it down this way so that you can see how I start. Pull that up a little. Is I lay my ruler right down on the fabric a little away from the beginning. And I make sure that I lay one of the lines on that fold of that fabric so I know that everything is straight. Then all you need to do is flip over that little part that you left. Raise your ruler up just enough on both ends, pull it towards you, and all you have to do is fold it over, lining up with your edges here first to make sure that everything is nice and straight, and you kind of push that so you know it's tight on your ruler. Then all you have to do is keep sliding and flip and turn and fold that ruler. When you get to the end, you just flip it over like this. You're going to take and you're going to put your hand there, just slide that ruler about halfway, take and fold the fabric right in half. I take my fingers, slide through there so it's nice and flat and even, and just slide the ruler out. No cardboard, no insert, no extra expense needed at all for this method. And then your fabric is nice and everything. Using this method, no matter what the yardage is, it will all come out the same fold. And when I have that there is a selvage on there that I can write on, instead of putting a label on there, I will just write with my pencil right on the selvage, because then as I cut it off, I can always change that amount to the new amount also. But I know that this is 1 yard, so I just write right on the top, 1 yard. When I look at that fabric, I will know how much is there. And of course, you may recognize this. These are my Tula Pink fabrics that I got while I was on the Amish shop hop lately and haven't had a chance to put those away yet, which those won't be going on my shelf yet. Some of them will, some of them won't, but I do have a project in mind. So then this is the next one, and again, it's been pressed, prepped, and everything. And again, we'll slide this down so you can see the beginning. And I'm just going to do the same thing, lining it up on a straight line here so I know that everything is straight. Flipping that little beginning fold over, you just have to line it up on the bottom there, give it a little tug so it's tight, and then you're just flipping that ruler and folding. Easy peasy, quick and easy. Just slide it out. Take your hand in there, smooth, make sure that fold is smooth. Slide out your ruler, and this one I can also write right on the selvage. Oops. We put a half instead of 1 because I know the others are, which see, because it's pencil, I just mark that out. And that one's ready to also go on the stack. And I'm going to get, I have more of these, but I'm going to get down to where it is. Those are the only, those are the only 2 that were a yard. These are a 1/2 yard cut, so now I'll show you how I do it with a 1/2 yard cut. So here we have a little smaller. On this, all you have to do is kind of center your ruler so it's laying in the middle of that fabric. Fold over that edge, fold over that edge, slide it together, kind of pinch with your fingers up here as you slide that ruler out. This time you're going to go a little slower, only because you want to keep that together. Slide that ruler all the way out, and your 1/2 yard comes out just exactly the same as your others. And be sure and write the amount on there before you put it in your stack. So that can be added to the stack. We'll do one more 1/2 yard just so I can show you that again. This is also from the Tula Pink collections that I have. Just going to lay that ruler right in the middle. Flip, flip, and press that together. slide it out. Straighten your little fold. Mark the amount. If you don't, what I use when you can't write it on the selvage is I buy the little round sticky labels. The little square ones don't stick as well, I have found. So I use the round ones, and you will just, and it doesn't matter. I don't use them color coordinated with it. I just use whichever one. And I would put, write the half yard on the little label, stick it up there, and you have it marked. So either way is how you can do that. So there we have yards and half yards. I have some other yardage. It's done the same. I use this method for all the way from 3 yards to a half yard. Anything smaller than a half yard, I do not store this way, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. Anything over 3 yards, I do not store on my shelves. I store that in a container underneath my long arm, and it is folded the long way on the ruler, not folded in half, and then placed just as if it were on a bolt in a big storage tote that I have, and I store that underneath my long arm. Normally I'm using those for backings or something like that. So that is why they are stored that way. But the next that I will show you, which is the most common fold, is a fat quarter, and the way that I store those, which there are a million ways to fold fat quarters. I'm just going to show you the way that I prefer, quick and easy, the way I did it when I worked in a quilt shop. So a fat quarter, of course, for those of you that know, is a half of a half a yard. So I already have that pressed, and I've got it so the 22-inch is the long way. We'll slide it down a little here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to fold that in half, fold it down in half again, stick my hand in the middle, fold that in half, and in half again. And you have, oops, as long as you pick it all up at the same time, and you have your nice little stacked fat quarter. And I'm going to do all 3 of these. I only have 3. So again, it's just in half again. So it's fourths, just like fat quarter, half, and half. It goes stacked right on there. And I try to keep them all the same direction. So, which we're folding that in half. And you will find that they're not always straight. So make sure you're just folding it as straight as possible. That other end will get squared off when I'm ready to use that fat quarter. But they all get stacked like this, and I keep them color coordinated. And I have a large, long dresser with great big drawers on it that I use on the other side of the room. That is my pressing station. And the 2 top drawers on the left are where I store my fat quarters. Doing it this way, they fit very nicely. Going down that drawer, all you have to do is open the drawer. You can see all of them, keeping them by color and collection. You can quickly see what fat quarters you want and may want to use. So that's how I store the fat quarters. Anything that is under a half yard and not a fat quarter, like a third of a yard, a fourth of a yard, I store those. Get this heavy, which this is not what I actually store them in. I store them in a drawer underneath my long arm, but I couldn't pull that drawer out to show you. So I just took them and put them in here to show you, but they're just folded. We'll pull one out. They're just folded like this, down nice, all the same. And those are 3rd yards and 4th yards. Anything, if it's 10 inches, yeah, 3rd yards, not quarter yards. Third, yeah, a 3rd yard and whatever. But and some quarter yards if I want, depending on what I'm going to use it for. But then they all are by color, all folded the same, and they go in a drawer that is a 2-stacked drawer unit that is underneath my long arm. And I keep those color coordinated too. So I know when I'm looking for a project that, you know, uses a random amount that is less than a half a yard, I search down there first to find and see what I have before cutting into larger yardage. So that is how I store all of those odd cuts. Anything that is, when I'm cutting for a project, then, I'm going to scoop this over here. If it is the amount that's left over, if it's a 3rd yard, I'm going to store that way. If it's a 4th yard, I'm going to store the way that I just showed you in the drawers underneath the long arm. Anything else, I will cut first. If it's 10 inches, I will cut a 10-inch strip. If it's not 10 inches, then I cut a 5-inch strip. Then I will cut a 2.5-inch strip. And that I have a stack of the plastic drawers that are all stacked. And I have 4 drawers that I keep 2.5-inch strips by color in. I have 1 drawer that is 5-inch strips that I keep by color, and then another drawer that is 10-inch strips that are stored by color. And that is because I know a lot of you are familiar with the pre-cuts, and that is the most well used and known ones in the pre-cuts: the 10-inch layer cakes, the 5-inch charm packs, and the 2.5-inch jelly rolls. So that's how I store all those. So those are ready for any pattern that is calling for layer cakes, charm packs, or the jelly rolls, or 2.5-inch strips. Then also anything that is less than that and a random size under 2.5 inches are all just thrown in, or if it's not a full 2.5-inch strip by the width of fabric, they all get thrown in this little bin, and they are used for strip quilts, scrappy quilts, that type of thing. I also have ones that are already pre-cut in here to size for those of you that are familiar with the potato chip block. Those are already cut, ready to go for using as a potato chip block. And those are stored in a cupboard door part that is right underneath my cutting surface here. And then, of course, what do we do with the little itty-bitty scraps? One other thing to show, talking about the 5-inch squares. I do have, when it's not a full 5-inch strip or whatever, I do have the partial 5-inch strips that I store, okay, in this container right here, which they're all just random 5-inch ones, maybe 6 inches. I'll trim it down to the 5-inch. But what I do with those, I don't have the little, it's up here, we can get to it quickly. I do a lot of the tumbler block quilts. So I have those in there, and when I have the time, I just take and I go ahead and cut those 5-inch squares into the tumbler block. So if you have leftover charm pack squares or whatever that you're not using, those would go in here. And when I have time, I just sit and cut them into the tumbler block shape, and then I can just pull out and make scrappy quilts or whatever using those. So that is another way that I store some of those odd sizes. And that has its spot underneath my long arm also. Store a lot of things underneath my long arm. Alrighty. And then for the smaller ones, this is my scrappy crumbs container, rather large, and that is where I store all the little leftover odd pieces. Some strips will get thrown in there from time to time. It just depends on the size and whatever, but then you can just, when I'm doing things that, you know, use the little scraps, doing making crumb blocks or whatever, or making Franken bags or anything like that. This is underneath, it's stored underneath my sewing cabinet out of the way, and I can just pick it up, pick what I want out of there, and work with the little crumb blocks. So everything has its place and is nicely stored and out of the way instead of randomly all over the place. So that is how I do mine. We'll just leave that there for now. And one of the other things that I was going to share with you, if you have any questions, please leave that in the comments and I will answer that. Also, please be sure while I'm thinking of that and talking about that, make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you like this video and it helped you with some ideas on how to fold and organize and store your fabrics. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead, hit that subscribe. Click on the subscribe down below, sorry, in the description box. That's not in the description box. You know where it is. You'll see it. Just go ahead, subscribe, click on the bell for the notifications. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for supporting me. And that's out of the way. The other thing is, of course, if you're interested in my Facebook group where I share lots of things and we have a great time doing many things, the name of my Facebook group is Friends of Captain Stitches Quilting Stitching Bee, and the link for that is in the description box. I will also link the Terrible Magic, not link, but let you know where it is. You can find it on Amazon, and possibly if I find that, if you're interested in the tumbler block template, I will link that in the description box as well. And the one other thing that I just wanted to touch on, getting this out of the way, is of course there's many other things that we do with our fabric. We have projects going on. We have certain collections that we want to keep separate from others that I kind of do on my shelves. You're seeing the random over here. This shelf actually goes the whole entire 18-foot length down this wall and is from the floor to the ceiling. So my collections are stored that you can't see in view. They are stored on separate shelves by collection, and that's how I'm stored. These are sorted by color in this section that you can see that are just random stash. So, but what I wanted to show was how I store my projects, and I will go into more detail on that in another video. But these are my most commonly used container. They're the art bin, the Sterilite, whatever, are similar. But I always label them on the front so that I know what's in it. And that will have everything that is on a project that I am working on, which this happens to be my Dear Jane quilt that I'm working on. The fabrics that are already pulled for some of the blocks in here, and some of the blocks already pre-cut out, ready to hand stitch. But that is how I store a lot of my projects. But I just wanted to share that with you because that part of the storage and organization of fabrics I will share with you on another Tip Demo Tuesday. So thank you everyone for watching. I hope this gave you some inspiration. Have a happy day stitching, and remember, I can keep you in stitches. Bye-bye, everyone.